it's a hard novel to talk about because it's simple, but yet there's so many themes going on, and they're hard to explain when it's it's not a loud novel.
And it's funny.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
she's very funny.
Yeah.
We were talking about, Sarah and I were talking about, we somehow started talking about Laurie Colwin and Ruth Reichel, because Ruth Reichel gave a quote for the book. Ruth Reichel loves the book. And the food stuff is so good.
Yeah.
We do bring props.
I wish I was at home, I'd bring all my Laurie Colwin out. But I gotta go find something for you guys.
Okay, come back. So I'll catch you up. So Sarah said she didn't read Ruth Reichel immediately because she said, I already have Laurie Colwin, that's enough. And then she of course did read her and loved her. And it turns out there's never enough food fiction and nonfiction. Never.
Yeah.
Oh, what is that? That's beautiful.
It's just my Laurie Colwin quote about no one who cooks alone, even at her most solitary. A cook is in the kitchen is surrounded by generations of cooks past, the advice and menus of cooks present, and the wisdom of cookbook writers.
Oh,
I love that.
That's my problem.
Yeah, and I think, I do think, food, but she also, obviously, we were talking about whether Sarah said, she's writing about family. And I said, oh no, she's writing about affairs. And sometimes both, mostly both, but she's also writing about life and what we want out of life. And isn't that sort of at the heart of this, like, what of the part of this story, like what do we really want? Like what's important to us in the world?
And you mean in Search too, because that really is the heart of
right.
Search. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So it's got such a double meaning of the title too. And it is for everybody who's on the search committee. And I think too, because she doesn't do, she does religion, but she just looks at what we want within those the frame of that as well. I think she brings that up nicely. Like what is it we all want as humans, as this big picture thing? But it's not a big picture. It's not like this heavy book.
No. I was curious. Go ahead.
Well, it's also about what can you expect from a community? Like it's a search, and it's creating community, and it's about what you want, but it's about what you can expect. That's what I kind of took away. It's a different, it kind of flips it a little bit.
Lisa, do you have, because I was going to say
go ahead.
That I was going to say that what I love about the book is I understand there's been some discourse about whether civility is good and whether civility is bad, but this is a book about working civilly with people that you don't agree with. And that not everybody you agree with, if you understand them, is necessarily a bad person because you would disagree with them. To me, that was a really important part of the book in terms of all the splits in the committee members.
And there were moments of big eye rolls, and then you're like, wait, oh, and you have to sit with it a little longer because that person has a right to that voice on this committee, and they have a different way of approaching it. And it is about that civility and letting each of us have, I guess, the big word of our own agency and being able to express that respectfully. But all of these things come afterwards. They sort of are like the lingering flavors of a good dinner. They just kind of stick with you.
It's certainly not going to be the thing probably that I have been as I've been trying to talk about the book. So I was just curious, like, so you have this person in the store and you're like trying to talk to them about new books or programs you have. And so how are each of you pitching the book? And I'll tell you, we're probably having a lot of overlap, but whatever, let's reinforce it. Sarah, do you have an idea, or Lisa, do you want to?
Well, I just think it's so great about a search committee because it doesn't, and I say search committee because I think a lot of people have been on a search committee of some sort or another, whether it's for a board or for the next manager of something, or, you know, in our regional stuff or whatever we're doing. And it's so personal. And if you're someone like me, you get a little passionate, maybe too passionate. And then this made me reflect on those experiences, but also made me just want to say that it's a book about community. It's just a book about building a community and being a part of it. And yeah, getting along with people and thinking bigger. I mean, and I grew up in a church. My dad was a priest, and I just also would think about, because he would go, he wanted to move from Wichita, but he felt like he was just a little bit too old for whatever. There was a new generation coming along, and so I felt that in this too, because the guy leaving is 64 and the other one had been there a long time. And my dad would always go, they just want the youngsters. They just want the, and it made me think about what his interviews must have been like. Anyway, that's an aside. But yeah, I think I just want to say it's a book about community and trust me a little bit.
Trust me. Lisa, what are you doing?
Well, I do say it's the most unusual premise, and that, you know, it's set as a search committee for a new pastor, but it's really about how we work together and the space that we share. And we do that with book clubs. We do that with, I'm on the library board. We do that in so many different places that we have to come together and make decisions. So I just say it's funny, and it is so full of heart.
Yeah.
And trust me. Yeah.
I definitely
Please come.
I definitely
Please read it.
I definitely like to say the setup and say this is the most whack setup premise that I have ever heard of. This is a book about somebody looking for a minister on a new minister of a congregation. That's it. That's all the book's about. And people are like, what? But and of course, I was talking to somebody who was Catholic, and they're like, we don't get to pick the minister. And but you're right. It is it. But many denominations do, and that are top down. And also, you know, I was on a prize committee once, and it reminded me a lot of what that was like, especially because the book that won was my least favorite book of the shortlist.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I was in that situation where I had to kind of bend to other people, and I've heard other stories like that. And yeah, different bookstore committees and things like that have been like that as well. And I think, you know, you find yourself in it, you find yourself reading the book and going, yeah. And on top of that, it's funny. And on top of that, she's so good with characterization, and every character has, whether you like them or not, she finds the grace in every character that she is writing about. And also, and the food stuff's just so fun.
The
Yeah.
food stuff's so fun.
So fun.
And then what about all the sermons? I mean, just the descriptions of what people want in a sermon, those conversations, I just loved those so much because, well, it's just, I love readings because we're all in the same room, we're listening to the same words, and then we can come together and talk about it. And the fact that they're talking about that experience of what it's like and what they want in that collective storytelling experience is, I loved those sections. I loved them a lot.
And they're so vastly different from each other too. Like what somebody really wanted more of, somebody wanted less of. And you think you're all kind of experiencing it at the same time and place, but we have different expectations, like you said, and it is really so much about what we expect and what we can expect and what maybe we should expect or should not expect. That.
Yeah, and true to life, sometimes they didn't really know what they wanted.
No. And each character, you felt like you had a chance to root for them, and you also felt like you had a chance to say, no, stop. Yeah.
I was talking about my Michelle Huneven obsessiveness. So she's one of those authors that I had to be a completist on, and went back and read Round Rock, the first book, just last year, having been in my possession for 25 years without reading it. And how much reading her first book, James Lamb, meant to me, and this one, nicer cover and hardcover than paperback, but I guess that's not unusual in the world. And that book is so like somebody said to me, this book is so different from her last few books that were done with Sarah Crichton at FSG, because Blame, of course, got shortlisted for the National Book Award, and all her first four books really dealt a lot about addiction and recovery, but particularly the last two really dove deep into it. And somebody said to me, who probably was hearing people talking about internally talking about the book, this book is so different from all her other books. And I'm like, I finished the book and I said, it is not different from James Lamb, which is this book about, as I said, my favorite, as Lisa knows, my favorite theme is Lost Souls, Found Family. So she actually finds books for me like Music of Bees that she introduced to me that were definitely in that area. And these are a bunch of struggling people trying to make sense of life, much like this book. It's inspired by the varieties of religious experience, and everyone has this different philosophy, whether they're Jewish or Buddhist or a UU minister or obsessed with the idea that Freudian psychology will give them the answers of life. And I love that this book kind of approaches that sort of. There's not, it's just Unitarian, but it's still, people come at, even from very different perspectives to figure out what they love in life. And the other thing that everybody needs to know about this book, you don't have to read it, it's just an Easter egg for people who have, that Helen, who is a kind of, not a minor character in the book, a kind of a consultant, a former UU minister, is a main character in James Lamb, one of the main characters.
Oh, how fun. I didn't know that.
No, I didn't either. I love it when they do that though.
I did too. One of my favorite found family books was the Early Morning Riser that we did. And that's why this book is sort of, if you liked Early Morning Riser, it's because of the having to accept different people and realize that the situation you have is not so bad. It's the lens that we see things through that affects it.
Sarah, did you read Catherine Heide's book, Early Morning Riser?
I have not read it yet.
Oh, you would love it, Sarah.
No.
Yeah,
you would really love it. She's channeling Laurie Colwin in the book. It's
Okay,
Laurie
I'll
Colwin.
just go. I mean, Jason was, and
He was right. The first book,
He often is.
Her first novel almost seems too much, because it's like on the Upper West, it's like right in the community, and it's like you can see her like cribbing. But to take that kind of aesthetic and then move it to small town Michigan gives it it has a call out, but it has a uniqueness. Oh my God.
Yeah,
okay, I'm gonna go buy one upstairs and take it home tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
it's not. It's coming in paperback in a couple months. Wait.
Yeah, she's doing paperback.
Yeah.
We sold it really well. We
did too, despite the fact that. Yeah.
I can't read them all. I also just want to mention, this is an aside with my nephew. I really love another Jason book, Marrying the Ketchups, that's coming out in a few weeks.
Right.
I loved it so much that I said, I'm going to read everything. So I went back and I'd never read it. Have you ever read her before? So I hadn't either. We had done pretty well with Girls in White Dresses when it came out. And then the last novel, it turns out when I asked my former colleagues who I overlap in reading taste with, Nancy and Sharon, they'd all read it. So Sharon, who you might know, the Shady Hollow Sharon, so you did an event with her. That's the half of Juno Black.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
She's a really great reader.
Yeah.
And they'd all been reading Jennifer Close, but I never paid attention. So Girls in White Dresses is one of those like vintage novels where it's not a novel, it's a collection of stories with overlapping characters. But once again, is so clearly in love with Laurie Cohen, and in like stylistically, like just in the way, there's something in the way of observation that I loved so much about Colwyn. The way she could like look at a situation and sort of process it. And so anyway.
And again, her novels are like when I try to sell Happy All the Time, it's about relationships. It's about life. It's hard to pin it down. All you can say is it made me feel so good when I was reading it, and it's so satisfying, and I think about it all the time.
Right.
And sometimes that's just got to be enough.
Right. And even though it's so New York, it is not so New York, because the emotional resonance of and the relationships and the way she captures, sadness, but also the joy you get from other people. I mean,
and
it
that's
transcended all that. And I was not a well-traveled person, and I started reading those books before I'd ever been to the city. And so they had that kind of romance for me, but that would kind of disappear or float away pretty quick as I got into the book.
I still travel by reading, so.
Yeah, and I didn't read her fiction.
I don't travel that much, so I travel by reading.
I had never been to New York, so I would always read these New York books and think, oh my gosh, and then you go and it's, people.
Lisa, what were you saying?
I was saying I hadn't read her fiction. I just read her nonfiction. So last year actually is when I started reading her novels, and they're amazing. I can't believe I didn't read them all. So,
home cooking definitely has a very special place in my heart, but
me too.
I'd actually read pre-home cooking. I had been reading all the fiction pretty much when I started in Milwaukee. So she'd already been writing for a good long time. And I think that's I think the first book that came out while I was a bookseller was, I'm going to be proven wrong. I think it was Another Marvelous Thing. So another affair book.
I always make her gingerbread on Christmas morning.
I was obsessed with her gingerbread, and we were in Lawrence, right when we moved to Lawrence, and I was making that gingerbread all the time.
The Steens, you need the Steens, and it was not easy to find at that point. But anyway, back to Michelle.
Yeah. I love the recipes in the back, and I feel like I need to make something.
And they're not in the galley, which is
right. That's right. They weren't there. So now I want to go through and see. Have you thought about? I wish there were more.
It's really fun to see them in the back. It makes me really happy because I read the galley too, and I'm just glad the way this whole book turned out.
Oh, it's
so good. I
mean, it is. I mean, it's just love. I just love the picture.
Pledge Drive's Chicken Fiesta. We all have our version.
Yeah.
Well, I was morning glory muffins.
Yeah, we could make the morning glory muffins, Lisa.
Those are so good.
Oh, those would be really good.
So,
Danielle, I haven't made food for an event for years now.
Well, I know that's what I've been thinking about. I'm like, this is like my big. I told my booksellers at first we weren't going to have any food. And I'm like, okay, while we're green, if it comes up, we're not good. We might have some sweets. So I know. So
have people bring stuff. We did that with.
I think that might be too much. That might be too messy for me. But
we
it
did
depends
that
how many
with
people we can.
Kitchens of the Great Midwest. We had people bring a dessert and had a contest, and he judged it.
Fun.
And mine won, but
of course,
and I wasn't there. But
no,
it was my recipe. The cafe
no.
made it, and so it's like, no, you can't. Anyway, it was kind of funny.
You know,
but you could do something like that.
Yeah. You know, that's funny that you should say that because I've been thinking that they should have like a J. Ryan Stradle library because he's such a champion. He's become such a book champion. And especially some of these books with a little foodness in them, or I think he did 2 events for Music of Bees, and it feels like there is a J. Ryan Stradalness to this book a little.
Mhm.
I love we had the beer event in a bar with beer.
Oh, that's fun. That's so
But
fun.
we didn't, but nothing special like that. So we tell you what we're doing? So we did get, like I told you, I was really expecting this event virtual, and it turned out that she was going to Chicago, and with that lucky thing that they said, that we get added on sometimes. And so Lisa and I have been doing this conversation program.
I've seen your conversations. I love them so much. I do.
Yeah.
You guys are so impressive.
They're fun.
Oh,
They're
I
really
saw
fun.
you do, we copied you on one, like we took your author, like, when I watched, what was the Nigerian British author?
I can see the book, The Girl with the Louding Voice.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Wasn't she great?
She was.
She's
Yeah, so we
fantastic.
actually asked for the book in paperback because you did such a good job, and she was so wonderful.
Yeah.
And so we've been doing these virtually. It's one of the exciting things about virtuals. And so then we said, let's see if we can figure out how to do this in person. So for this book, which we were going to do virtually, we're going to basically drive the author back and forth between the stores. And Lisa's going to do a daytime event, and I'm going to do an evening event. But we're both of us in conversation. Both of us are
At both
of us in
places.
conversation.
That's so cool.
Isn't that fun? Yeah.
Yes.
Really
Yeah.
excited.
I'm excited about it too.
So Sarah has Leslie Jameson in conversation.
Oh,
It's
fun.
virtual. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
virtual. But Daniel was talking about the addiction element. So I was surprised that it was Leslie Jameson. I was thinking someone who didn't live in Brooklyn. I don't know where Leslie Jameson's from, but it just made me happy to think about those two together.
That's
But now
gonna be
you
interesting.
see that there's
And I'm still
more
happy about it.
connection. There's
Yeah.
more connection that once you see what the through line of her fiction,
Right.
as I like to
Right.
say, is
Yeah.
there. So
But it really is, I mean, the reason I even started this is because somebody in the store was putting together a display of, if you like this, you'll like this. And she wanted to include search, and she hadn't read it, and she asked me, and I was just like, well,
Yeah.
and I started looking around and I couldn't think of it. And the first thing I came up with was, okay, put it by French Braid. Just put it by that book because it's character driven. Although it's a bigger book. I mean, they're both big books, but this is it's a broader, reach in terms of the characters and the community. And hers is, have you guys read French Braid?
I did. It's quiet too. And this
It-
one is not as in the same sense quiet.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's got a lot more humor in it and the food part, but yeah, I would say, yeah, I love French Braid.
it's one of her broader family canvas. Like she has like kind of like micro novels, and then
Mhm.
the ones that sprawl a little over the years, ladder wise or whatever. I loved it too. But I have to say, at this point with Ann Tyler, I'm like, I like them all. I mean, I just can't. Yes, another book where last year when I was doing that thing, I read my very last Ann Tyler that I hadn't read. So, which was not
Your very
one of the
last
early,
what?
Ann Tyler.
Okay.
I had actually read, she was just in that interview where she said that she hasn't pulled them from print or anything, but she's kind of doesn't love her very early work, the work she wrote in the 60s. And I was like, oh, I loved it. And I love but I loved reading it as a preliminary to like where I felt like she hit her stride, which she's right. It's about in the 70s, like I found that true about Alice Hoffman too. Like her very early books, like her first or second book, are just super different in terms of tone. And then by like the third book, you're like, okay, this is an Alice Hoffman novel. And I love the way when you go back and read authors, like even if you don't love each one equally in the early things, you can see the progress that they're making, especially at the beginning. And I sometimes wish I could read, when someone says, this is my fourth written book, but my first published book. So you think I broke out really, out of the box, but no, I have all these other books. And I'm like, I'd like to read those, the rejected ones.
Did you guys already talk about Kim Fay?
No.
Love and Saffron? That was a wonderful sort of coincidence. We had had a conversation with Kim Fay for Love and Saffron, and she had just finished Search that day, because she's doing conversations with Michelle Huneven in California together.
I think one of them might be with Ryan Stradel too somehow.
It is. Like, there's the three of them are going to be together. Yeah.
That's so fun. Love and Saffron. I have this customer, she's from Alabama. And so she goes, it's just like getting a big hug.
It is.
He's right.
And
that's what she meant it to be.
Yeah.
What?
That's what she meant it to be too.
Oh, it was so good. And it was not, she never got contrived. Ever.
Yeah.
It could have been so, yeah. Love it. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think definitely you could, there's super connections between those two books, especially about the intergenerational stuff in this book. Definitely continues over from Love and Saffron, and obviously the food. So,
and the fact that the characters are stretched by the situation, all of them, yeah.
And it's even, did you know that, so we did the event, and the woman who is Barbara Hansen, who is the younger woman.
No, Barbara Hansen is the character.
Right. Barbara Hansen is the real person who is
Sorry.
inspired the younger woman in the book. She goes to all her events.
And the Joan, no, it wasn't Joan.
Joan
It
Bergstrom.
Was, yeah,
Joan
it was
Bergstrom. Joan.
Yeah, Joan. It was Joan.
Yeah.
So you should look up Barbara Hansen, Sarah. She's really interesting as a food writer in LA.
If you've been a bookseller long enough, you'll know her because she wrote HP's Mexican Cookery, which was a book that we used to sell.
And I know that cover.
I know. I looked at it, I'm like, oh, that Barbara Hansen.
That book,
yeah. If the book keeps selling, HP is actually folded into Penguin. They could if they still have the rights, they could reissue Mexican Cookery.
Oh, that's true.
Now wait, what is folding into Penguin?
HP Books. Do you remember HP Books?
Yeah.
They were, HP, like Price Stern. They were bought by Price Stern Sloan, and then Price Stern Sloan was bought by, I think, Putnam at the time.
Okay.
And so it's sort of, if we love and Saffron, it's doing very well in the indie market, of course, but if it ever exploded, people would want to
have the Mexican cookbook, the cookery. Yeah.
Well, any other hints for us on either of you, hints for me on how I can get this into how I can market this book better to people?
The people I've mentioned, I think it's just getting in front of people and getting the staff on board to talk about it. Yeah. One of my staff is reading it right now, and she was at a point where she was a little afraid that it was going to start sort of being in that space of making fun of. And I said, oh no, it doesn't at all. It's just so full of heart, and it's not going down that road. It's not snarky. It's not and maybe that's the thing that's so fresh about it, is at first, you have that real second where you're like, and then it changes, and it's like just a breath, and you're like so grateful for it to not be the way we are, what we're navigating through right now with people not working together. It's a way of opening up and being kind about differences. So,
And also about our responsibilities to other people, because haven't you been asked to do something and you think, why did I say yes? And you just kind of resist it and you get sarcastic and snarky and think, oh, they're lucky to have me, and why am I doing this? And then and then pretty soon it's what is saving you at that moment.
yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
It is. That this is the thing about the book, is it has these so many revelations after you've read it. It's definitely one that's going to stick. And how to convey that to people, like, just I've given you so many good things to read. You have to come and you have to trust me on this one because it's good. But then you don't want to put the expectations way up here, because then they'll be like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. This isn't Gentlemen in Moscow.
Yeah, no, it's not.
Nothing else is.
No.
Yeah, one of my staff just said, and you love that book, right? And I said, yes. And he goes, okay, I'm going to read it. I trust you.
Oh,
Well, that's what one of
that's
mine said too.
beautiful. Really?
Good, see?
Nobody trusts me.
No one trusts you.
Lynn, trust me.